What's up, fishing peeps? Today we're talking about the best bass fishing rod for beginners. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and I'll teach you all about catching fish. Okay guys, so we're gonna break this out into 3 pieces. The first piece is deciding which type of rod to buy. The second piece is more of the details of that rod and what to buy. And then the third piece is how much money should you actually be spending on your first fishing rod for bass fishing. So the first piece is deciding whether you want a spinning rod or a bait casting rod. They're both very different. I have an example of each one here. On the bait casting rod, you can see the first eye is definitely small. And then they progressively get smaller. On the spinning rod, the first eye is extremely large in comparison here. Very large, and then they progressively get smaller. It's not really until the third or fourth guide until you really get to about the same size as the bait caster. So you really have to make a decision on what type of reel you want before you choose your rod. So to help you make your decision, I'll go back to the days of when I was a beginner and how I made my decision. I looked at many professionals. Most professionals almost exclusively use the bait caster. There are certain situations that they use spinning reels more for finesse type fishing. But most on a day-to-day basis will be using a bait caster. And the reason is you can have pinpoint accuracy with your bait caster. It is very easy to control and very easy to use once you learn how to use it. So that being said, I personally recommend the bait caster first. But if you're uncomfortable doing that because of backlash or you've had bad experiences before, that's not a problem. A spinning rod will do the job. You'll learn how to catch bass just as easily as you would on the bait caster. And once you're done learning on the spinning rod, I would suggest picking up a bait caster again and taking some time to learn that. And the same way with the bait caster. If that's the one you start off with and you do really well with it, then pick up the spinning rod and start using it as well. Both have certain applications they excel in, but they're both worth having in your arsenal. So the next piece is length, power, and action. And if you don't know what all those mean, don't worry, I'll explain it and we'll get through this together. As far as length of a rod, I recommend around a 7-foot rod. It gives you plenty of leverage against the fish and is not too long that it's really hard and cumbersome to travel with or to handle. Many fishermen start around a 7-foot rod. I almost exclusively use 7-foot rods. They store easy in my boat and they store easy in my house. It doesn't have to be exactly 7 foot, plus or minus a couple inches is good too. Some applications you might want a longer or shorter rod. A longer rod for maybe jigging crappie or a shorter one for topwater. Now we're going to talk about power and action. They go hand in hand, so it makes sense to talk about them together. First, let's talk about power. Power of a rod is defined in typically weight class. Extra heavy, heavy, medium, and that type of thing. Power really defines the size of fish you're targeting. So for bass, a medium heavy should suffice for most situations. There are times that you may want to use different size powers, even for bass. So like if you're flipping weeds, flipping trees, flipping brush, you're probably going to want to move up to the heavy or extra heavy because you have to rip the fish through the trees or the grass, and you're carrying more than just the fish typically. An action is easily defined as how fast the rod tip goes from bent over to back to straight. So these are defined in typically speed type terms, such as fast, extra fast, slow, moderate, and those type things. And for bass fishing, typically a fast rod will do the job. And the reason that you may want different speeds of rod tips is for different types of hook sets. So like if you're using it as a cranking rod, you may want to use a rod tip that's a little slower and doesn't go back to straight as fast, because you're not going to get as good as hook set into those fish like you would maybe a Texas rig, where you can get a really good hook set and don't really have to worry about the fish getting loose on a slack line. If you're wondering where to find the length, the power, and the action of a rod, it's actually all printed on the rod itself. This one is actually printed on the bottom side. It's usually near where the reel goes. So here it is. This one is a 7'1", medium heavy, fast action rod. It even tells you the line recommendations and the lure size recommendations. So the third and final piece that we'll be discussing here is, how much should you spend on your first bass fishing rod? Well, my opinion is you shouldn't spend more than $100 on the rod and reel combo until you really understand what fits your needs. No sense in spending a whole lot of money on a rod and reel combo. No sense in spending $600 or $700 on a rod and then you just snap the end of it off in your tailgate. That's me right there. I've done that one. So the discretion is yours on how much money you really want to spend on your first rod and reel combo, but my recommendation is stay below $100. In conclusion, and in my opinion, the best bass fishing rod for a beginner is a bait caster that's around 7 foot, plus or minus a couple inches, that has medium heavy power, has a fast action tip, and can be bought in combo with a reel for less than $100. Thank you for watching this video. I hope I've helped guide you to your first bass fishing rod and reel. But until next time, get out there and go catch you some fish.